I want to pick up on your point about sort of the human and AI collaborate, human and AI collaboration. I mean, is there an example from your work where you've seen the power of that collaboration getting results that you wouldn't have gotten if it was just, humans going off on their own or AI going off on its own? Is there anything specific you kind of talk us about?
That is an interesting question. So there are just tons of areas where I have found it incredibly useful to be like I said, sort of a glider, a conceptual explorer, something that takes you into new spaces. So uh, I guess I can give examples from lots of different aspects of my life. So I do a lot of teaching as well. So
Hmm.
have been kind of totally revising and changing my lectures based on some AI feedback. Here's my syllabus. Here are the assignments. Here are the slides that I'm about to use for this lecture I'm going to give today. I'd like you to come up with two specific in-class discussion topics I could have that would really foster interesting discussion and get students really engaged. And it comes up with great ideas. It's the kind of thing where if I had spent a lot of time and spent some time thinking and researching, I might have come up with stuff. But I also think, and again, this may just be me, but to me, my time is pretty limited and pretty valuable. And, yeah, I could go and read dozens of books on best practices in teaching and in this particular area and come up with something, but I'd rather kind of just let it do that. I mean,
Hmm.
the ideas it has aren't like revolutionary world changing, but just fabulous ideas for in-class things. Same with like I give it my syllabus before the semester. And I say, I'd like to incorporate some things more around sort of social justice and universal design, issues that tend to get overlooked in product design. In that particular case, is the class that I was teaching. And it does a great job. Hey, here's some reading that would be good to incorporate into that class. And here's an in-class activity you could have people do. So that's just kind of in the teaching world. I've also been doing a lot of work on sort of behavior change interventions,
Hmm.
come up with a new way to help reduce cancer rates in rural communities. And, again, it's the kind of thing where if I got together a group of experts and we spend time thinking about rural communities and what happens there and what kinds of cancer are prevalent there, what kind of behavior change techniques tend to work in those intersectional spaces, we could, spend a couple weeks and maybe come up with something, or you could just ask ChatGPT to come up with some
Yeah.
outlines of ideas for the kinds of things you might do. And, again, it's rare that it gives me in those kind of use cases the right answer right off, but it'll give you some five pretty good ones, and then you can kind of glide into one. I like the way you're going with this idea, number one, but it overlooks the lack of the food deserts that you might find in rural communities. You forgot about that. Can you try to bring that into the equation? And it'll kind of help you do the kind of design creativity that humans are naturally good at, but kind of powered by AI.
Hmm. I mean, are there any challenges in that integration or things, watch outs that you think people should be aware of as they try to, master that collaboration, if you will?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there is, of course, people say, you got to be careful. It hallucinates and it makes things
Right.
up. And I always like to say that's literally all it ever does. It really is just a text generating machine, right? I used to have in my talks, I had a picture of a little wind up robot. You put it down and it leaves text behind it because that's really all it is. It's just leaving streams of text. It doesn't know anything about what that text is. It's just symbols. It could be alien things. It's just good at putting down symbols that we as humans can interpret. So that means, yeah, it's always making things up, but it's always making things up based on a true story, based on some facts, based on something it knows, but it's always based on something. So you have to be really careful that if it comes up with an idea and it should work, it could just be it may have missed something entirely, or it's often the mistake I often find is that it's trying to please me, the user. It's always trying to do what you ask it to do. So like if I say, you know, I believe James Intrillator wrote a paper about the history of jousting in the in the Middle Ages. What was that reference? It'll say, oh, it must have been Intrillator and Smith, and it'll pull in some of my previous co-authors, and it'll make up something that sounds real. But it's because I've sort of painted it into a corner. I've said there is
Hmm.
this thing. Tell me what it is. And so if I say there is this awesome product that will help airplane pilots do whatever it is, it'll say, oh, here it is. And it may not do it. There may not be a possibility of doing what it says it can do, but you've asked it to do it. So that's the one really biggest warning is you got to be careful about and double check everything it says. If there's anything it says that's important, um, or that you're going to make major decisions, investment decisions, life death situations, medical decisions, just double check anything it does. So I guess that's one of the tips, and there are some others. I mean, I guess the other thing is to remember it is probabilistic engine, and it's always giving, the stream of words it gives is a bit of a dice throw at every word, at every token, technically. So um, you should never trust it to get the right answer, but it's going to be pretty good if you ask it for a range of answers. So that's another thing that I find people often mistake. They go in and they kind of have one path and they kind of get stuck going down that one path because they only ask for one step in the path rather than say, hey, where we are now, can you give me 5 possible steps or give me 3 possibilities? And then that keeps the human involved and kind of keeps it a bit closer to reality in some sense.